Mm. Hi, everyone. In this video, we're going to focus on a core ethical responsibility in research. That includes the informed consent and ethical management of participant data. The readings for this module make a shared and important point. Ethical research does not begin and end with an IRB approval or consent signed. Ethics must be actively practiced throughout the entire research process. Informed consent is often treated as a procedural requirement, but the text reminds us that it is a fundamental and ethical relationship between the researcher and a participant. Participants disclose personal, physical, or behavioral information under the expectation that their autonomy, dignity, and privacy will be respected. Importantly, consent is not static. It does not transfer ownership of a participant's identity, experiences, or personal information. Instead, it establishes conditions under which information may be used responsibly. And this raises a critical question emphasized in our text. Whose data is it anyway? Privacy is closely linked to identity and personhood. Individuals expect to control what information about themselves is shared, with whom, and for what purpose. A violation of privacy may not always result in measurable harm, but it can still constitute as an ethical wrong. The authors in our text stress that participants can be wronged even if they are not obviously harmed. This distinction matters because ethical research is not only about avoiding damage, it's about respecting rights. For doctoral researchers, this means recognizing that ethical responsibility extends beyond the outcomes into intentions, procedures, and safeguards. Both texts emphasize the importance of distinguishing between anonymity and confidentiality, a distinction that's often misunderstood. Anonymity means that participants cannot be identified by anyone, including the researcher, once the data is collected or reported. Confidentiality means that the researchers know the participants' identities, but commits to protecting that information from unauthorized disclosure. In most research, true confidentiality is difficult, if not impossible, because research findings are meant to be shared. What researchers are often promising is anonymity in dissemination, not secrecy of the data itself. Ethical consent requires that this distinction be communicated clearly and honestly. Dimick emphasizes that once the planning is complete and data collection begins, researchers assume additional ethical responsibilities. This is the phase where ethical lapses are most likely to occur, not out of malice, but out of poor planning or insufficient data management. Research data are described as the currency of research. They are what researchers use to publish, secure funding, and establish professional credibility. Because of this, data must be collected and managed with integrity. Responsible data management begins with accurate and transparent recording. Whether data are stored in bound notebooks or electronic files, records must document what was actually done, when it was done, and what results were obtained. Alterations must be clearly noted and justified. Electronic records, in particular, must be protected against unauthorized changes. And poor record keeping undermines not only the scientific validity, but also ethical accountability. Once data are collected, researchers are responsible for protecting them. This includes safeguarding against loss, theft, unauthorized access, or misuse. When data contain identifiable or sensitive information, additional layers of protection are required. This may include restricted access, coded identifiers, and secure storage systems. The researcher who collects or uses the data bears the primary responsibility for its protection, not the institution and not the IRB. Ethical responsibility also extends to how long data are retained and who has access to them. Data should be preserved long enough to allow verification of findings or secondary analysis in accordance with institutional and funding guidelines. Ownership of data is not purely personal. In many cases, data are institutionally shared or owned or publicly funded, which creates shared responsibility and accountability. Researchers must understand and comply with applicable policies governing data access, retention, and destruction. Finally, both of the text readings acknowledge that ethical commitments have limits. Promises of confidentiality need to be reconsidered if participants disclose information indicting serious harm to themselves or to others. This reinforces the central theme that ethical research requires ongoing judgment, not blind adherence to rules. Researchers must continually balance respect for participants with larger and broader ethical obligations. As doctoral researchers, you are not simply collecting data, you are stewarding trust. Participants grant you with access to their bodies, behaviors, and lived experiences with the expectation that you will act responsibly at every stage of the process. Ethical research is not just about compliance, it's about integrity, respect, and accountability. As you design and conduct your studies, continue to ask yourself, whose data is this? And what do I owe the person who's given it to me?